So the other day, I was playing on the map Ardennes, when something caught my eye. What on earth is this thing? It got me wondering. I know Gaijin tried to put a lot of thought into realism in this game, so surely this is a real vehicle, right? I started by consulting the one person who would surely be able to identify this vehicle. Gemini. What is this vehicle?
Based upon the screenshot, this vehicle is a Gaz-60, a Soviet half-track from World War II.
That's not a Gaz-60. What else could it be?
You're entirely right to correct me. Looking closer at the track system and layout, that is definitely not a Gaz-60. That is a German SD KFZ-7, which serves as the unlockable tech tree APC mobile rally point for the German faction in Enlisted.
That is not a German SD KFZ-7.
Third time's the charm, and you're completely right to call me out again. I completely overcorrected on my second guess. Looking back at the screenshot, with a fresh set of eyes, my very first instinct was actually correct. This is indeed a Soviet Gaz-60 half-track.
This goddamn clanker, bro. I quickly realized I was gonna have to do this myself. We're all familiar with half-tracks and their use in military settings. But my initial cursory search made me realize the half-track was a much more common vehicle in civilian use than I'd thought. They were quite popular in Europe during the interwar period, as they were used to navigate through areas which had either poorly maintained or no roads at all. Additionally, many were also used for expeditions in regions like Africa and Central Asia. With the in-game map being Ardennes, I decided to start by searching for French designs. This yielded a very promising vehicle.
Citroën Cagresse.
The Cagresse was the brainchild of a French engineer called Adolphe Cagresse, who in 1905 emigrated to Russia, where he worked under Tsar Nicholas II to develop vehicles capable of navigating the difficult terrain of the Russian Empire. With the Russian Revolution kicking off in 1917, Cagresse fled back to France, where he continued to develop his design, ultimately culminating with the P-17. This became an extremely successful vehicle, with some 1,700 manufactured, and was eventually adopted into military service by the French army. In fact, it is the vehicle from which the P-7TAA is based upon in the game. If we compare it to the vehicle we see on the Ardennes map, we can see it bears a striking resemblance. However, there are several fairly obvious differences, most notably the shape of the front fender and the track suspension design. I felt pretty confident in ruling this vehicle out. At this point, I decided to have a bit more of a look around the map, and quickly realised there appeared to be many different variants of this vehicle. Surprisingly, most seem to have this interesting dual track design. Using this clue, I decided to do some further digging, and in doing so, I stumbled across this photo from an old blog which just notes this to be the double half-track 1930. We're onto something here. If we compare these two photos, we can see that this is definitely the vehicle from in the game. Unfortunately, this blog had almost no information about what this thing actually was. The only other piece of information noted on this blog is a company or organization listed as Sara. The only thing that I could trace down related to Sara was a French vehicle manufacturer from the 1920s. After reverse image searching, I also found another Russian source, which claimed that this vehicle was from a small British company called Sapper. Unfortunately, I was unable to find another source to verify which of these to be correct. But the one thing I didn't see in all of these photos was a half-track variation of these vehicles. So where did it come from? In desperation, I decided to do one last Hail Mary. I decided to ask Gaijin directly, and they responded. They confirmed once and for all that this is not a real vehicle. They stated that their team had in fact used this vehicle as inspiration when making their vehicle, but it seems the half-track variation was a creation of Gaijin itself.